After I started working at the zoo, I was added to a group chat called 100 Ways to Kill a Human. Every member had an animal as their profile picture. At first, I thought it was some quirky staff group. I even found it kind of cute. That was until I realized they were discussing how to eat me. Pedro the parrot, the new human, has beautiful eyes. I can't wait till Christmas. I want to peck them out right now. George the gorilla, relax. There will be many visitors during Christmas. We'll have more eyeballs than we can eat. Also, I'm calling dibs on her thigh. Thor the tiger. Nobody's taking her head, right? That's mine. Tucker the elephant. I'm a vegetarian, but I can crush her bones to dust. My fingers trembled. Slowly, I lifted my gaze toward the elephant enclosure, the area I was assigned to. An elderly elephant was staring straight at me. Its eyes were dull and cold, filled with fatigue and resentment. Its massive body was covered in cracked, dry mud. Flies swarmed around it, and it looked like it hadn't bathed in ages. We locked eyes, and a chill ran down my spine. What on earth was that group chat? When I looked down again, the chat had gone silent. Hey, newbie, get to work, my coworker snapped. He walked into the enclosure with visible disgust, grabbed the hose, and sprayed the elephants roughly. They backed away, clearly unwilling to let him near you useless beasts. He cursed. I'm so sick of taking care of you. Get over here. The elephants didn't move, so he threw the hose on the ground. Fine, stay filthy. See if I care. He stepped out of the enclosure and turned to me. I'm done here. Don't forget to prep their feed later. But don't bother too much either. They barely eat anyway. What a waste of money. Then he left. Every elephant glared at him as he walked away, especially the old one, its cloudy eyes full of rage. My phone buzzed again. Tucker, the elephant. When Christmas comes, I'll be the first to crush Hose Guy. Then I'll crush all the humans. Ellie the elephant, let me stomp on them too.
Dad.
Chuck the seal. Christmas means lots of humans. If we riot at that time, we can kill so many of them. Kingsley the monkey, Hose Guy deserves to die. The new girl probably sucks too. I'll throw a rock at her head to see how she likes it. I blinked in shock and instinctively looked around. Suddenly, with a whoosh, a rock the size of an egg flew past my ear, missing by inches. My he's almost gave out. On the monkey hill not far away, a monkey was standing upright, baring its teeth at me. The moment it saw me look, it scratched its chest and grinned, pretending innocence. I swallowed hard. I was sure of it. Now that the group chat was full of animals, I stood frozen, completely stunned. Those animals, did they hate humans that much? And they were planning a revolt on Christmas? After hesitating for a while, I finally stepped into the elephant enclosure and began my work. All the elephants watched me with blank, emotionless eyes as I moved. I tried to focus on cleaning while my mind spun with questions. The place was in terrible shape. The enclosures, both inside and out, were piled with dung, and the stench was overwhelming. The artificial stream and pool once built for the elephants to play in were now black and stagnant. The faucet on the fake rock wall hadn't produced a drop of water in ages. Even animals cared about cleanliness, especially intelligent ones like elephants. Couldn't imagine how miserable they must have been, living in conditions like this. I scrubbed and shoveled hard, hauling mound after mound of dung out of the enclosure, and scouring the food troughs that hadn't been cleaned in days. By noon, I'd only finished about 70% of the job, but the elephant enclosure already looked worlds better. I didn't stop there. I ran to prepare their feed next, only to find the supplies painfully sparse. There were mostly palm fronds and some dry brittle hay. There weren't even vegetables, let alone fruit. Is this all the elephants eat? I asked the woman working next to me. The zoo isn't short on funds, right? I wouldn't know. I feed the capybara as their food's worse, she said hurriedly before rushing off. I pressed my lips together and grabbed as many bundles of hay and leaves as I could carry. Back to the elephants. When I returned, the group chat chimed. Ellie the elephant. He worked so hard cleaning that I thought she might be a good human. But as it turns out, she's just like the others, feeding us dry hay. Benny the elephant. I'm so hungry. I want papaya. It's been ages since I had papaya. Boo-hoo North. The polar bear, stop crying. I ate rotten fish today. At least a pile of hay would have been better. I hesitated for a second, then dumped the feed into the enclosure. The elephants shuffled over, eating with hollow, weary looks. There was only grief and resentment in their eyes. The old elephant didn't come near. Instead, it lay down and stared blankly outside the enclosure, as if lost in thought. While they ate, I bolted to my car, drove to the nearest supermarket, and cleared out the produce section. Mangoes, strawberries, apples, bananas, papayas, cabbage. I bought as much as I could and had the store deliver the rest to the zoo. Before long, the feed room was piled high with fresh produce. My coworkers stared in disbelief, but I ignored them, hauled 3 full baskets of fruit and vegetables, and took them to the elephant enclosure. When the fresh produce hit the floor, the elephants froze. They had been chewing on dry, tasteless hay and sour leaves. They clearly hadn't expected anything like this. Eat, there's plenty, I urged, tossing a mango steam toward the old elephant. It didn't react at first. The fruit hit the ground and cracked open, white flesh spilling like jelly and smelling sweet. The old elephant stared at it. Then it slowly curled its trunk around the mango stone and examined it, as if it couldn't believe such a thing existed. Finally, it looked at me. Go on, try it. It's sweet, I encouraged. Its mouth watered, and in a blur, it scooped the whole mango stone into its mouth. For the first time, I saw contentment and something like gratitude on an animal's face. The others went wild, devouring the produce like they'd been starved for years. I ran back and forth 3 more times with baskets until the chaos subsided. Meanwhile, the chat exploded. Ellie the elephant. Dad, I got an apple. It's so sweet. I'm tearing up. Benny the elephant. Wow. Cabbage and papaya, they're my favorite. Pedro the parrot. What's all this yapping? I got slapped by a zookeeper again today. It's been 56 days since I wanted to peck that human's eyes out. Thor the tiger, stupid. Elephants remember, every bit of human kindness hides a hunter's rifle. Kingsley the monkey. Hey, what occasion are you guys celebrating? Toss a banana over here. I read the message and looked up at the monkey hill. Kingsley the monkey and a big gang of monkeys were scratching their ears and chattering. All of them staring at the elephant enclosure. Many monkeys stretched out their hands, hoping an elephant would fling a banana their way, but the elephants ignored them and kept eating. I grabbed a banana and hurled it toward the hill. Kingsley the monkey leaped up and snatched it midair, already chewing before his feet hit the ground. He looked like he hadn't eaten in days. Monkey Troop howled and squealed, begging me for more bananas. My hands were only so fast, so I tossed as many as I could. The whole hill rattled with noise like a little festival, and with the commotion from the elephant enclosure, that corner of the zoo suddenly felt alive. Animals from nearby enclosures crowded to watch, and they filled the air with a non-stop chorus of chirps, squawks, and bleats. Luckily, the zoo was quiet today, with almost no visitors. Otherwise, anyone passing by would have been terrified. The truth was, Sunnyside Zoo had been quiet for years. And the main reason was the stench. It smelled really bad. The whole place reeked of animal waste. And on top of that, many of the animals looked listless or openly hostile. No wonder people stopped coming. In fact, only the holiday season drew a trickle of visitors. However, if the animals rioted on Christmas, that would be a disaster. Visitors would be at huge risk, and the animals would likely be shot. I checked the calendar at that moment, realizing it was 7 days until Christmas. While I worried, conversation filled the group chat. Ellie the elephant, that was delicious. Finally had a proper meal. She's a good human. Kingsley the monkey. I agree. The way she tossed that banana is burned into my memory. My butt's tingling. Wendy the capybara. Hey guys, last week I found a rotten orange that was tasty, but it just crossed my mind to share the joy today. Thor the tiger. Interesting. That human really knows how to win beasts over. When I go out, I'll be the first to kill her. Wait, tiger. Are you serious? Wasn't right. Then a different voice spoke up in the chat. A voice I didn't expect. Benny the elephant. Thor the tiger. That human is truly kind. Don't hurt her. Thor the tiger. Kid. You'll learn when you're my age. That human kindness often hides a loaded gun. Wendy the capybara. All these messages are making me sleepy. I'm going to take a nap. Kingsley the monkey. I think we should keep observing Thor the tiger. Don't be impulsive. Thor the tiger. It was like a tiger's roar echoed through the group, and the chat went quiet. I shook my head and kept working. Normally we could take a lunch break, but there's too much to do in the elephant enclosure. The urgent task was to restore running water. Without it, bacteria would breed and the elephants would fall ill. I spent 2 hours tracking down the person in charge and slipped him $200. Finally, he opened the water valve for the elephant enclosure. From the fake rock cave, a clear stream began to rush. Water from the tap gushed down the rocks into the creek, and the flow swept toward the pool. In a few hours, the dirty water would drain away, and the elephants' lives would be a little better. The enclosure erupted. Excited calves raised their trunks and trumpeted, while bold elephants jumped into the stream without hesitation, ashing even though the water was cold. On the monkey hill, Kingsley the monkey craned his neck and shouted, "Oh ho! Oh ho!" I didn't understand what it was saying, so I opened the group chat again to check Kingsley the monkey. "Oh ho! Oh ho!" The egrets shared account. "What's that silly monkey going on about? He almost made us fall when we passed by." Kingsley the monkey. "I'm sorry. I got too excited. I'm saying the human gave the elephant enclosure water." George the gorilla. "I heard it too. It sounds so familiar. That human really is a good human." Animals kept popping into the chat, arguing and commenting. I even saw a panda send a gift with its paws together, like it was thanking someone. For some reason, my chest felt warm and a small smile tugged at my lips. And the tiger showed up again. Thor the tiger. How naive. Food and water are ours by right. Those humans dangle a little treat and expect us to forget everything. If she dares show herself, I'll rip her apart. The chat went quiet for a long moment. After a while, Kingsley the monkey asked, "What if she gives you your favorite, a big drumstick?" The question hung in the digital silence of the group chat like a dare. What if she gives you your favorite, a big drumstick? A minute passed. Then two. On my screen, the typing indicator appeared next to the name Thor the tiger, vanished and appeared again. My heart hammered against my ribs as I waited for the response of a predator that could snap my neck with a single, casual swipe of his paw. Thor the tiger. A drumstick? You insult me, monkey. I am a Siberian tiger, not a stray alley cat to be bought with a piece of stringy poultry. If she brings me meat, it only means she is trying to soften my resolve. A hunter does not take bribes from its prey. If she comes near my enclosure, I will taste her hand before I touch whatever she holds. Pedro the parrot. Squawk. Trust no one. She's fattening us up. A holiday roast. I say we peck her eyes out while she's sleeping. Ellie the elephant. Leave her alone, Pedro. She gave us fresh water. Do you know how long it has been since we had fresh water? My throat doesn't burn anymore. George the gorilla. Water is good, but Thor is right to be careful. The ones who feed you are often the ones who lock the cage door the tightest. I slowly let out the breath I had been holding. The phone in my hand felt incredibly heavy. They weren't just reacting, they were thinking. They had memories, grievances, and a deeply ingrained, entirely justified hatred of the people who ran this place. I looked down at my worn-out sneakers, then toward the predator section of the zoo. The tiger enclosure was situated at the far end of the park, surrounded by a high, rust-flaked iron fence and a dry moat that had long since filled with dead leaves and plastic trash. If Thor was as angry as his text suggested, I was walking into a minefield. But I couldn't stop now. I checked my banking app. After buying the mountain of fresh produce for the elephants and monkeys, I had exactly $45 left of my emergency savings. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. I slipped out of the zoo gate during my scheduled 15-minute break and drove to the wholesale butcher shop 3 blocks away. The butcher, a stout man with grease-stained sleeves, looked at me like I had lost my mind when I asked for the thickest, freshest slab of raw beef marrow bone and prime flank he had, right down to the budget limit. "Dog must be royalty," he muttered, wrapping the heavy, blood-red package in butcher paper. "Something like that," I murmured, clutching the cold package to my chest. When I returned to the zoo, the afternoon sun was beginning to dip, casting long, skeletal shadows through the bare branches of the oak trees. I walked past the main office, keeping my head down. Through the dirty window, I could see my co-worker, the hose guy, whose name tag read Richard, slouched in a plastic chair, watching a video on his phone and laughing. He didn't even look up as I passed. I made my way to the tiger enclosure. The air here was different from the rest of the zoo. It smelled of old copper, ammonia, and damp earth. Thor's enclosure was a concrete-walled pit with a single, dead tree trunk in the center. There was no grass, only hard-packed dirt that had turned to gray muck in the winter damp. Thor was pacing. He was magnificent, but it was a tragic sort of beauty. His coat was dull, patched with dry skin, and a long, jagged scar ran down his left flank, likely the result of some old injury that had never been properly treated. Every few seconds, he would hit the corner of the concrete wall, turn with a sharp, fluid jerk of his shoulders, and pace back the other way. Thump, thump, thump went his heavy, silent paws. I approached the safety barrier, the butcher package heavy in my arms. The moment my boot clicked against the gravel path, Thor stopped. His head snapped toward me. His golden eyes, pupils dilated in the dimming light, locked onto mine. A low, vibrating rumble started deep in his chest, a sound that wasn't just loud. It vibrated through the soles of my shoes and made my teeth chatter. My hands shook as I unwrapped the paper. The scent of fresh, metallic blood hit the cold air. Thor's ears twitched. The rumbling stopped, replaced by a sudden, tense stillness. He didn't move a muscle, but his nostrils flared. "I know you don't trust me," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "And you shouldn't. But you deserve better than what they give you." I didn't throw the meat over the fence into the dirt. Instead, I walked around to the feeding chute, a metal slide designed to deposit food safely into the enclosure. I took a scrub brush from my utility cart, quickly cleaned the grime off the metal chute, and then gently slid the massive beef bone and the thick slab of flank down. The meat slid with a soft thud onto a clean concrete ledge near the bottom. Thor didn't rush forward. He kept his eyes on me, taking 3 slow, deliberate steps toward the chute. He lowered his head, sniffing the offering. His tail gave a single, sharp twitch. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out with one hand, keeping my eyes fixed on the tiger. Thor the tiger. It is clean. There is no chemical smell. No gray slime. Kingsley the monkey. Is it the drumstick? Did she do it? Thor the tiger. No. It is beef. The marrow is rich. But this changes nothing. A single meal does not undo a lifetime of iron bars. Despite his words, Thor lowered his massive jaws, clamped them around the flank, and carried it back to his wooden platform. He didn't rip it apart with wild fury. He ate with a slow, almost dignified precision, keeping his golden eyes fixed on me the entire time. I stood there in the cold, watching him eat, until my hands grew numb. For the first time since I had joined the group chat, the fear in my chest began to give way to something else, a profound, aching sorrow for these forgotten lives. Over the next 3 days, the atmosphere in the zoo underwent a subtle but undeniable shift. To the casual observer, if there had been any, nothing had changed. The signs were still rusty, the pathways were still cracked, and the winter wind still blew dry leaves across the empty plaza. But underneath the surface, there was a strange, vibrating energy. The elephants were cleaner. Every morning, before Richard could get to them with his high-pressure hose, I would arrive an hour early to gently wash their thick, sensitive skin with warm water and a soft brush. I worked until my back ached, scraping away the hardened crust of old mud and replacing it with clean, dry straw. The monkeys on the hill no longer threw rocks. When I walked past, they would sit in a neat, silent row along the edge of the stone wall, their small, dark eyes tracking my movements. Occasionally, Kingsley would let out a soft, low whistle, and I would toss a handful of fresh sunflower seeds or a slice of sweet potato into their enclosure. But my phone remained my most important tool. I lived in the shadows of the group chat, reading their private world. Wendy the capybara. The new girl brushed my belly today. It felt like warm rain. I think I forgot how to be angry for 5 minutes. George the gorilla. Do not let your guard down, little one. The keepers are quiet, but the big boss is not. I saw him talking to the hose man today. They had maps. They were pointing at our gates. Chuck the seal. They were at the pool too. They didn't bring fish. They brought a big black truck and some men with loud voices. My fingers paused over the screen. A big black truck? Men with loud voices? The zoo is failing financially. That much was obvious. The gates barely saw 20 visitors a day, and most of those were local teenagers looking for a quiet place to skip school. Why would Director Vance be bringing in extra people, especially at night? That evening, instead of going home after my shift ended at 5, I drove my car to a dark corner of the gravel parking lot, killed the engine, and waited. The night was freezing. The windows of my old sedan quickly coated with a layer of thin frost. I wrapped my coat tighter around my shoulders, checking my phone. 100 Ways to Kill a Human was unusually active. Pedro the parrot. Strangers in the courtyard. Strangers. They smell like gunpowder and cold grease. Squawk. Danger. Thor the tiger. They are near my night cage. 2 of them. They do not carry the food buckets. They carry the long black sticks that spit fire. Tucker the elephant. They are speaking of the holiday. The 24th. They said, make sure the lock is loose. My stomach dropped. Make sure the lock is loose. I slipped out of my car, closing the door with a soft, barely audible click. Staying in the deep shadows of the overgrown hedges, I crept back toward the administrative building. The gravel crunched beneath my feet, and I had to step carefully, matching my footsteps to the sighing of the winter wind. Light was shining from the window of Director Vance's office. I crouched behind a row of dead juniper bushes, my breath rising in pale plumes of steam. The window was slightly cracked to let out the heavy stench of Vance's cigar smoke. I pressed my back against the brick wall and listened. Are the transport cages ready? Vance's voice was slick, like oil on water. Yeah, Richard's voice replied, followed by the sound of a beer tab popping. But I don't get why we have to wait until Christmas Eve. The park's going to be packed for the light show. If something goes wrong, it's a tragedy, Vance interrupted, his tone sharp and mocking. A terrible, unavoidable tragedy. A rusty gate, an agitated predator, a panicked crowd. The tiger gets loose, kills a couple of visitors, and our security team has no choice but to put it down. Along with the gorilla and the elephants if they panic and break their fences too. And the payout? Richard asked, his voice greedy. The insurance policy on the animals alone is worth $5 million, Vance said. But the real prize is the land. The city won't let us sell this prime real estate to developers as long as the zoo is operational. But if there's a mass casualty event, a public safety disaster, the city council will shut us down. Within 48 hours, we sell the land to the high-rise developers, collect the insurance, and we're on a beach in Costa Rica by New Year's. What about the new girl, Clara? Richard asked. She's been hanging around the enclosures a lot, cleaning up, buying them food out of her own pocket. She's a pain in the ass. Let her work, Vance sneered. In fact, make sure she's on duty near the tiger enclosure when the gates accidentally open. It'll look even better for the press if a dedicated young keeper is the first victim. It shows how unpredictable these beasts really are. My blood went entirely cold. My knees trembled so hard I had to press my hands against the frozen brick to keep from falling. It wasn't just a riot the animals were planning. It was a setup. Vance and Richard were deliberately orchestrating an escape. They wanted the animals to break out so they could slaughter them, collect the insurance, and sell the land. And they wanted me to be the bait. I scrambled back to my car, my mind racing in 100 different directions. I sat in the driver's seat, my hands shaking so violently I could barely unlock my phone. I opened the group chat. The screen glowed in the dark car, illuminating my pale, terrified face. I couldn't just go to the police. What would I say? The animals told me in a group chat that the director is planning an insurance scam. They'd throw me into a psychiatric ward before the night was over. I had to warn the animals myself, but they didn't trust humans. To them, I was just the new girl, a slightly better version of the monsters who kept them in cages, but still a human. I took a deep breath, tapped on the text box, and did something I hadn't done since I was added to the group. I typed, Keeper_09. Do not break the locks on Christmas Eve. It is a trap. The chat fell into a sudden, absolute silence. For 3 minutes, the scroll of messages stopped completely. The quiet was deafening. Then, the screen began to light up with notifications so fast the phone vibrated continuously in my hand. Pedro the parrot. The lurker speaks. The spy. She has eyes. She has words. Peck. Her. Peck her eyes. Kingsley the monkey. The banana lady? She can read our thoughts? George the gorilla. Who is this? How do you have the words of the forest? Keeper_09. My name is Clara. I'm the new keeper. I was added to this chat by accident when the zoo's internal network registered my work phone. I've been reading your messages. Please, you have to listen to me. Director Vance and Richard are planning to let you out on purpose on Christmas Eve. Thor the tiger. A human lie. You want us to remain quiet so the men with the fire sticks can come for us in our sleep. You want us to be weak. Keeper_09. No. If you break out, there are men hidden in the bushes with rifles. They aren't going to capture you. They are going to kill you. All of you. Thor, George, Tucker, Ellie. They have an insurance policy on your lives. They want the land. If you step out of those gates, they will shoot you and tell the world you were monsters. Ellie the elephant. But the old one said we would be free. If we crush the walls, we can go to the forest. Keeper_09. There is no forest near here, Ellie. Only concrete and roads. They will trap you in the open and hunt you down. Please, let me help you. We can stop them, but we have to do it together. Thor the tiger. And why should we trust a hairless ape? Your kind built the bars. Your kind brought the whips. Keeper_09. Because I'm the one who cleaned your water. I'm the one who bought you the meat. I don't want to see you die. If you don't trust me, trust the facts. Have you seen the men with the black cases near the gates? Have you smelled the gun oil? They are already here. A long pause followed. George the gorilla, the hairless one, speaks with a heavy heart. I can hear the fear in her words. She does not smell like the hose man. She smells like tears. Tucker the elephant. We have seen the black cases. The old one says the human speaks the truth about the guns. Thor the tiger. If we do not fight, we rot here anyway. What is the difference between a bullet and a slow death in a concrete box? Keeper_09. The difference is that this time we can win. We don't have to run into their trap. We can spring it on them. The next 2 days were a blur of nervous tension. Every time Richard looked at me, I felt a cold dread in my stomach, wondering if he could read the desperation on my face. But he was too lazy and too arrogant to notice. He spent his time checking the locks on the enclosures, subtly loosening the heavy iron bolts so they could be easily pushed open from the inside. On December 23rd, the temperature plummeted further. A light, powdery snow began to fall, dusting the bare trees and the backs of the shivering animals. In the afternoon, I saw Richard carrying a bucket of meat toward Thor's enclosure. He had a strange, nasty grin on his face. I followed him at a distance, hiding behind the thick trunk of an old willow tree. Richard didn't slide the meat down the clean chute. He threw a chunk of gray, unappealing horse meat over the fence. But before he did, I saw him shake a small paper packet over it, a fine, reddish powder that clung to the wet surface of the meat. Eat up, you big rug, Richard muttered, spitting on the ground. Get nice and angry for tomorrow night. As soon as Richard walked away, I ran to the fence. Thor was standing over the meat. His tail was lashing violently from side to side, and his eyes were bloodshot, his pupils dilated to the edge of his golden irises. He was growling, a low, pained sound that vibrated with a sudden, unnatural aggression. The chemical was already in his nostrils, driving his wild instincts to the surface. Thor. No. I cried out, leaning over the safety barrier. Don't eat it. It's drugged. Thor looked up at me, his upper lip curled back to expose his long, yellow, canine teeth. He looked completely wild, his majestic mind clouded by the poison. Richard had slipped into his food. He took a step toward the meat, his muscles tensing. Without thinking, I grabbed my keys, unlocked the service gate to the outer barrier, and stepped into the secondary safety zone, closer than any human should ever go to an agitated tiger. Thor, look at me, I pleaded, my voice cracking. I pulled a fresh container of milk and a bottle of activated charcoal tablets from my bag. I had bought them at a pharmacy that morning, fearing Vance would try something like this. I quickly crushed the charcoal tablets into a soft paste, smeared it over a piece of fresh beef I had kept in my lunchbox, and threw it down the chute, far away from the tainted meat Richard had thrown. Eat the clean meat, Thor. It will stop the fire in your belly. Trust me. The tiger growled, a terrifying sound that shook me to my core. He took a step toward my offering, then looked back at the tainted meat. He was fighting his own instincts, his massive chest heaving as he struggled against the chemical haze. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't dare look at it, but the sound seemed to break the spell. Thor slowly turned his head. He ignored Richard's poisoned meat, walked over to the clean, charcoal-covered beef, and took it in a single, desperate bite. He swallowed it, coughing slightly, and then sat down heavily on the cold concrete. I watched him for what felt like an eternity. Gradually, his breathing slowed. The wild, bloodshot glare in his eyes began to fade, replaced by a deep, exhausted intelligence. He looked up at me through the double bars. He didn't growl. Instead, he let out a soft, air-splitting chuff, the universal tiger greeting of peace. My phone buzzed again. I pulled it out. Thor the tiger. The ash meat tasted of dust. But the fire in my blood is gone. You saved me, Clara. George the gorilla. The tiger has spoken. The human is one of us. Tucker the elephant. Tell us what to do, Clara. We are ready. I wiped a tear from my cheek, my heart swelling with a strange, fierce determination. Tomorrow, I typed back. We give them the show of their lives. December 24th, Christmas Eve. The holiday night safari was in full swing. The zoo had put up strings of cheap, colored fairy lights along the main pathways, casting a gaudy, flickering glow over the snow-covered grounds. Despite the cold, a decent crowd of about 200 people had gathered, mostly families with young children in puffy coats drinking hot cocoa and looking at the sleepy animals. I stood near the central plaza, my hands buried deep in my pockets, clutching my phone. According to Vance's plan, the accident would happen at exactly 8 p.m. During the nightly feeding demonstration, Richard would pretend to lose control of the tiger's shift gate, allowing Thor to leap into the public walkway. At the same time, 2 hired security guards, mercenaries Vance had hired under the guise of an extra holiday patrol, were positioned in the shadows of the old reptile house with high-powered rifles, ready to shoot. I checked the time. 7:45 p.m. I took a deep breath and walked into the zoo's main control room. The room was empty. The night technician had gone to grab a coffee, leaving the public address system unattended. I quickly stepped up to the console, pulled out my phone, and plugged the audio jack into the auxiliary input of the main microphone system. Then I opened the group chat. Keeper_09. Everyone in position? Kingsley the monkey. My troop is in the trees. We have the presents ready. George the gorilla. I am at the back gate. The lock is already open. I am holding the door closed with my own hands. Tucker the elephant. We're standing by the main path, waiting for your voice. Keeper_09. Remember, no one hurts the visitors. We only target the men in the black coats. On my mark. At exactly 7:55 p.m., I saw Richard walk toward the tiger enclosure's control box, his eyes scanning the crowd nervously. He reached for the heavy lever that controlled the secondary gate. I looked toward the shadows near the reptile house. 2 men in dark tactical jackets were standing behind a row of pine trees, their long black cases open on the ground. They were already assembling their rifles. I stepped to the microphone, flipped the switch to broadcast, and hit play on my phone's recording app. Suddenly, Director Vance's slick, arrogant voice echoed from every speaker in the park, loud and crystal clear over the festive holiday music. The insurance policy on the animals alone is worth $5 million. The tiger gets loose, kills a couple of visitors, and our security team has no choice but to put it down. We sell the land to the high-rise developers, collect the insurance, and we're on a beach in Costa Rica by New Year's. The crowd froze. Parents holding their children's hands looked up at the speakers in utter bewilderment. The festive chatter died instantly, replaced by a shocked, heavy silence as Vance's voice continued to detail the planned slaughter. What the hell? Richard yelled, dropping the lever and spinning around. In the shadows, the 2 mercenaries panicked, reaching for their completed rifles. Keeper_09. Now. The zoo erupted. With a deafening shriek, Kingsley and 30 of his strongest monkeys dropped from the high branches of the oak trees directly onto the heads of the 2 mercenaries. They didn't bite to kill, they acted like a coordinated tactical unit. 1 monkey pulled a knit cap over a shooter's eyes, while 3 others snatched the rifle scope. Another group of monkeys began pelting them with a barrage of frozen mud, old soda cans, and heavy pine cones. Get off me! Get these things off me! One of the shooters screamed, flailing wildly as his rifle was dragged into the bushes by 2 determined baboons. At the same moment, Richard tried to bolt toward the main exit. But as he rounded the corner near the gorilla exhibit, the heavy wooden gate swung open. George the gorilla stepped out into the path. He didn't roar and he didn't charge. He simply stood there, 8 feet tall, and 500 pounds of solid, ancient muscle, his arms crossed over his massive chest. He looked down at Richard with a cold, unimpressed stare. Richard gasped, his knees giving out as he fell backward into the snow, wet with terror. Don't please, he whimpered. George took a single step forward, reached down with one massive hand, gently took Richard by the collar of his jacket, and hoisted him off the ground like a wet rag, pinning him against the wooden fence. Meanwhile, Director Vance, hearing his own voice echoing through the speakers, ran out of the administrative office toward his personal golf cart, desperate to escape before the crowd realized what was happening. He slammed his foot on the accelerator, steering the cart down the main service path toward the back gate. He didn't make it. From the shadows of the elephant enclosure, Tucker and Ellie stepped onto the path, completely blocking the exit. Vance slammed on the brakes, the golf cart, skidding on the snow and coming to a halt inches from Tucker's massive, wrinkled legs. Vance looked up, trembling. Tucker lowered his trunk, wrapped it gently but firmly around the front bumper of the golf cart, and lifted the front wheels 3 feet off the ground, leaving Vance spinning the rear tires uselessly in the air. "Put me down. You useless beast, put me down!" Vance shrieked, his face white with terror. Ellie let out a triumphant, trumpet-like blast that echoed across the entire park. The crowd of visitors who had been listening to the recording of Vance's conspiracy suddenly realized what they were witnessing. This wasn't a wild animal attack. It was a rebellion. The animals had caught the villains. Someone in the crowd began to clap. Then another. Within seconds, the entire plaza erupted into cheers and applause. Parents took out their phones filming the spectacular, bloodless capture of the corrupt director and his accomplice. Within 10 minutes, the sirens of police cars and emergency vehicles echoed in the distance, their red and blue lights flashing through the snow-laden trees. The aftermath was a whirlwind of headlines. The video of George holding Richard and Tucker hoisting Vance's golf cart in the air went viral across the globe. When the police searched Vance's office and the mercenaries' truck, they found the unregistered rifles, the drugged horse meat, and the offshore banking documents detailing the insurance scam. Vance, Richard, and the shooters were arrested on multiple counts of conspiracy, animal cruelty, and illegal weapons possession. The public outrage was so immense that the city council immediately revoked the zoo's private charter and transferred ownership to a local wildlife preservation trust. But for me, the real change happened inside the gates. It was Christmas Day. The zoo was closed to the public, but the gates were wide, open for the volunteers who had flooded in to help. Truckloads of fresh hay, premium meat, and crates of sweet, ripe fruit were being delivered by local businesses who wanted to support the hero animals. I walked through the park, a hot cup of coffee in my hand, listening to the peaceful sounds of the morning. The elephant enclosure was pristine. The black, stagnant pond had been completely drained and refilled with sparkling, clean water. Ellie and Benny were splashing each other, their trunks spraying sparkling arcs of water into the crisp winter air. The old elephant stood nearby, his coat clean of the old, dry mud. He looked at me, his eyes no longer dull and cold, but warm and full of peace. He gave a gentle, slow nod of his head. I pulled out my phone. The group chat had been renamed. It was no longer 100 Ways to Kill a Human. The new title was The Clara Protection Agency. Kingsley the monkey. I got a giant box of bananas today, and some nuts with the shells still on. This is the best Christmas ever. Wendy the capybara. The new volunteers are very soft. They brought us warm blankets. I am sleeping on a cloud. Pedro the parrot. No pecking. No pecking today. Only seeds. Squawk. Merry Christmas, Clara. I smiled, a soft laugh escaping my lips. I walked down to the tiger enclosure. The concrete walls were still there, but the trust had already brought in surveyors to plan a massive, naturalized habitat with grass, trees, and a running stream. Thor was lying on his high wooden platform, his magnificent orange and black coat gleaming in the pale, winter sunlight. He wasn't pacing. He was stretched out, his massive paws tucked beneath his chest, looking like a giant, contented house cat. As I approached the barrier, he opened one golden eye. He didn't growl. He let out a deep, rumbling chuff that warmed the cold air between us. My phone buzzed. Thor the tiger. The beef was excellent today, Clara. But you look tired. You should rest. We have your back now. I looked up from the screen and locked eyes with the great beast. I raised my coffee cup in a silent toast, and for the first time in a long, long time, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged.